But I'm fascinated that Ellington has a Coltrane composition on this record date, and I think there is subtext here. 9 days before, Duke had made an album called Money Jungle, another one in this series of superstar collaborations, and both Charles Mingus and Max Roach arrived with their own compositions intending to be represented as co-composers. And Duke, in his suave way, led the way towards an all Ellington composed album, which Mingus in particular was unhappy about and said so. It was overt, it was at the session, and there are many people around who still remember it. This happened 9 days before this. Mingus and Max showed up with their own compositions, and Duke said no. And it got heated and almost spoiled what, thank heavens, is a delightful listen. 9 days later, Duke allows Coltrane to represent himself with the composition. I conjecture that the events are related, that at least the pathway is guided by the experience of 9 days before, and that Coltrane did have an interesting way around composition. He knew that one of the challenges to jazz is about form, that we're limited in the forms we use, and that even his earliest compositions, in a certain sense, tackle those issues. And Wynton Marsalis is, well, it is a self-contained statement. I mean,
right.
And
I mean, well, we don't know what happened. I mean, Duke might not have liked the tunes that Mingus and Max brought to him, and it doesn't mean that they weren't good tunes. He might not have felt comfortable playing on them, and he might have liked, the Train's tune.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's very simple and basic reasons for things going on. It's not, I mean, we weren't there, so we don't know, but it's not as complicated a lot of times as this report. It's much more fun when it's complicated, but
yeah,
he could have just looked at the tunes and said,
It could be about nothing, you're right.
This.
But one thing about John Coltrane's compositions are these dedications are not for very well-known people at times. I mean, Big Nick at least had some acclaim and press coverage in the 50s. He'd been very nice to John Coltrane on the way up. And I of course knew Big Nick, and he even led me to some very rare Coltrane playing on a very interesting record date. I might play it for you if you want to hear it. It's like that, but even earlier than that, A-flat blues called Castle Rock I played for you once.
Mm-hmm.
But Coltrane obviously heard the playfulness of Big Nick and played it on soprano because he thought it suited the mood. But he also knew that Big Nick might be able to make some headway by recording the tune himself, which eventually did. Big Nick was a tenor player, not a soprano player, and he left that open, and it was intentional. It's a very wonderful man who's thinking about the people like Joe Knight, the piano player in Earl Bostic's band. That's Mr. Knight. It's a very important thing, but whether these things are important, they're all being said by me. Wynton Marsalis is here, and people want to hear you talk. And I'm interested in having some of these things explained to me. Billy Taylor was here yesterday and brought up the issue of Have You Met Miss Jones in Giant Steps, and you just chimed right in and had a whole lot more to say. So why don't you map out the whole issue for us and add your additional input?
Well, I think that kind of progression, which in music we call an augmented progression, is two major thirds, major intervals. It's also in Monk's song Off Minor, which is a very difficult song to solo on. A good friend of mine from Philadelphia, a great young piano player, Fareed Barron, he has a whole dissertation on this off minor and how the augmented progression in off minor is a part of Giant Steps, and also Wayne Shorter's song Fee Fi Fo Fum, and Fee Fi Fo Fum Giant Steps, and how of course Have You Met Miss Jones, the bridge is an augmented progression, augmented triad. It goes down in a major triad in those keys. And Train was curious about a lot of mathematic things in music. There's harmony being the type of really closed mathematic system that it is. There's so many different ways to address it and to come up with nooks and crannies and systematized ways of going from one point to another. There's a certain category of musician that's really interested in that approach to playing. I think Coltrane was definitely probably the most successful of all of those in jazz. Of course, in classical music, there are many more with serial music and other type of mathematic formulations. And then you have a musician like Monk, whose music has that type of relationship, but in his solo and in his approach to playing, it's not that systematized. It's just the way he heard. He heard with a certain type of logic, whereas Coltrane was more systematic. He wrote songs like Miles's Mode, which is uses a 12-tone roll, and it goes one way and then it goes back the other way. Then he puts a little minor tag. He always is going to give you some blues or something country, something sanctified. I think Train understood the relationship of the very technical and mathematic to the earthy, and it's really the proposition of the blues and of jazz in general. Duke Ellington would be probably our greatest exponent of that. He'll give you something that's in the whorehouse, and then he'll give you something that's in the church too. He'll give you something that's like a city slicker, then he'll give you the country boy right next to it. And that's who Coltrane was. I mean, he's from the country. He moved to Philly, then he went from being like, a kind of country, very earnest musician. He went to Philadelphia. He studied at the Ornstein School of Music. He got a little bit of technical, theoretical information. He took that a long way.
You think he only got a little bit of it?
I think in relation to what was available, like with Schoenberg's teaching, and you go up to like the higher and higher levels of real complex harmonic teachings, I don't think he stayed at the school long enough to get that level of theory, but I think he developed his own theories from that information.
Right.
And I feel like the teacher, I don't know the guy who taught him.
Dennis Sandoli.
He said that Coltrane, a year was like 3 years for Train.